Cardiologists thought that you could either get a heart attack from three ways. It was a natural part of aging, it was genetic, or it was bad luck. And they didn't put lifestyle into the equation. And not only did they not put lifestyle into the equation, they refuted lifestyle. When there was some evidence, they said, no, that's an outlying study. Food deserts and food swamps are more prolific in areas of low socioeconomic status and also with minority populations, which is doubly worse. And sometimes these people don't have access to transportation, because if you can't afford to run a car, you can't afford to buy petrol and you can't afford to drive to the next town, maybe 45 minutes away, to go to a real supermarket where you can buy some fresh broccoli. Maybe you've got kids and you're stuck at home, or whatever the situation is, you are bound by your geographic location. And the only thing you can catch a bus to, or you can walk to if you're lucky, is a dollar store. And the dollar store is just full of garbage. And not only is it full of garbage, it's full of cheap garbage, because maybe you don't have money and you can't afford to buy fresh food. Then you buy whatever is in front of you and you are stuck in that cycle.
Welcome back, legends. I'm your host, as always, Callum Weir. Welcome to Plant Fueled. This one's about health, not your Instagram, quote unquote, one size fits all kind of health. This is about real health. The kind shaped by food culture, childhood experiences, broken systems and stories we inherit, long before we ever get a diagnosis or download a meal plan. Today, I'm joined by Terri Chrisman, nutritionist, educator, and author of Fabulous Health. And her story is powerful. She was put on a diet at only 4 years old. That's crazy. And like most people, men, women, anyone in between, spent decades being told that health was about restriction, willpower, thinness. What she learned and now teaches is that real health is far more complex and also far more freeing. We get into the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, but not as this one-size-fits-all checklist. It's about how small, imperfect changes can change the trajectory of your life, of your dietary patterns, and your overall health. We talk obesogenic environments, food deserts, how we rethink bad habits, and why your health isn't a moral failing. It's often a response to the culture around you. How even studying nutrition is still light years behind, and how trying to promote something as simple as just eat more plants is seen as outlandish, crazy, and assuming you have an agenda. We explore the psychological impacts of being raised in a world that profits off of poor health, the barriers people have when they try to eat well, and how to finally make progress that actually sticks. From dietary patterns to stress, community, mindset, aging well. This episode is going to meet you where you are. Because the truth is, we're not fighting calories. We're not just fighting cravings. We're often fighting misinformation, social pressure, and a system that truly doesn't serve us. So whether you're on your own health journey, supporting someone else's, or just tired of surface level wellness advice, this conversation might shift something inside of you. And if this episode rattles your brain, flips a switch, or makes you question everything that your year 10 health teacher said, hit that follow, drop a star rating, send it to that one mate who still thinks potatoes are bad. Whatever the platform you use allows you to do. It helps grow the show, keep the conversation sharp, and keeps me dragging brilliant guests into your ears. Cheers. Now to Terri Chrisman. Let's dive in. Peace and plants. Terri, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Hey, Callum, thank you so much for having me.
We have another Australian accent on the show. We went through a phase of having 4 or 5 in a row, and then it's kind of, we've not had any for a while, and now an Australian accent seems to have come back.
These are awesome.
Oh, they are indeed. Like, I lived there for a few years, and I miss every second of it being back in the UK.
Oh, really? Where did you live in Australia?
I was living in Sydney, lived in Cairns for a bit, and a bit in Byron.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. Yeah, that's way up the coast, isn't it? That's fantastic.
Yeah. Where were you from originally?
I grew up in Melbourne, and then I moved to Sydney in my early 20s. I lived there for 15 years. And then I moved to London for a while, and then I went to a place called Noosa, which is about 2 hours north of Byron Bay. Noosa and Byron Bay, for those of you who don't know, are beautiful places on the coast, gorgeous surfing, palm trees, chill. It's like being in Hawaii on a holiday all the time without all the Americans. And and then I lived all around the world, and I'm currently living in America.
Oh, amazing. It was a bit of a culture shock and a bit of a culture change, I guess, from the States as well, or States to Australia.
Yeah, not so much. I'll tell you what the culture shock was, moving from Australia to Hong Kong. I lived in Hong Kong for 5 years. That was beautiful. I love Hong Kong. I'd go back there in an instant. But the thing about moving around the world is, well, I don't know about everybody, but I had preconceived ideas about what it would be like. And then when I got there, all those preconceived ideas were blown out of the water. And living in a different country is just about being respectful of the country's laws and their customs and learning from the other people and not being afraid of anything that's unusual or, not the same as what you would have at home. And I've lived in lots of countries and I just love going and discovering new cultures.
So I've just nearly finished your new book, coming out soon, Fabulous Health, which for anyone listening, great read. You got it on the screen. However, when I have a guest on, someone, especially someone in the nutrition world, the nutrition space, is normally a journey they've been on where they've, normally realized that there was a bit something in health that needed to change. Whereas for you, it was very early on, wasn't it? Like, it's not every day I come across a path that you were stuck on a diet at 4 years old.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, isn't it? I wish I knew more about that because every podcast I go on seems to ask me about this. Why were you put on a diet at 4 years old? I don't know. I must have been fat, right? And that was in the 70s. So, a century ago almost. And I don't think back then children were overweight. And they thought there must have been something wrong metabolically with me because my mother was always cooking fresh, wholesome food. There wasn't this processed packaged food available. We didn't eat that kind of stuff. I was just a chunkus malunkus child. The family on my dad's side all struggled with their weight. And in the 70s, when somebody was 300, 350 pounds, like that was seriously obese and problematic. And they were an outlier. I guess my mum wanted to nip it in the bud early and she thought, well, you've obviously got your dad's genes and dad's sisters and dad's sisters' children are all obese and here you are, you little chunky little thing. Let's get you on a diet to try and get you back to a normal weight. I do want to talk to my mum about that actually and find out why I was put on a diet at age 4. But it's been a struggle, and I think genetics do play a role in it. My brother and my mum never had a problem with their weight ever. My mum is in her mid-80s. She's sprightly. She goes on hikes all the time. She's bushwalking. She's playing golf. She's doing all the things. She actually has a caravan that she tows behind her car and travels around the outback of Australia by herself at age 85, right? So she's living the dream and she weighs like, I don't know, 100 pounds max, blow her over with a feather. She's only tiny. She's only 5'2" or something, but she's never had a weight problem and she could possibly fit into her wedding dress now, 70 years later. So me and my dad, we look at a donut and it goes straight to our butt. So I think that's something that I've been aware of my entire life. And to say I've struggled is probably accurate. I'm always aware. And it's taken decades for me to work out how to have a healthy lifestyle that doesn't involve counting every morsel of food and weighing every morsel of food and depriving myself and feeling left out. It took a long time and it took knowledge. I have a master's in nutrition and the masters didn't tell me how to be thin and healthy effortlessly. The experience taught me that, but the masters gave me a grounding of all the science as to why my body might be operating in the way that it does. And the thing I've learnt by working with people is that you can't compare yourself to anybody else. I could eat exactly the same as you, Callum, and I know you're a man and we have different metabolisms, but assume, that's a level playing field. Your body will react completely differently to me. The amount of calories, the type of calories, how you metabolize your food, it's all different. And I think, I was thinking that if I just did whatever XYZ person was doing, I would have a healthy body. But it's taken a while to get to the point where I can just be chill and live my life.
I think that's one thing people really do forget is the fact that not any one of us is the same and everybody's so bio-individual. And just because one person can eat a certain way doesn't always mean it's going to work for everybody. We all have things like intolerances, the foods don't work for us, and all sorts of things. But people don't realize this, and then they see somebody online, projecting how they eat and follow that trend, being like, "Oh, if I eat that way, I'm going to look like that person." However, we're such a bio-individual percentile of people that not a single person is going to be the same or have the same outcome. Like, as you said, me and you, we're both, we're man and woman, but if we take away those differences, our food habits and everything else is going to be the same on how things work for us. Some things are going to give us more energy, some things, aren't. And I think especially what you just said resonated, because obviously you said about in the 70s, and like most people in the 70s were healthier than what it is now. So but there wasn't a great amount of nutrition information out there either. Like, people were just eating very much from the ground, or from, even if it was eating meat, it wasn't how it is now, where it's like injected with hormones and growth spurts and a shit ton of other things. And I think now we have in-depth nutrition information to actually help us. But in the 70s, as you said, like, having people that were slightly overweight or obese was such a rarity.
Absolutely. I saw this video online the other day. It was a chef, and he said, it was my daughter's birthday and I didn't have time to make a cake, so I went down to the supermarket and I bought a cake, and we all ate the cake and it was great. Happy birthday, blah, blah, blah. And then this morning I thought, after breakfast, I'm going to have a little slice of cake. And as I pulled the cake out of the fridge, the nutrition label was in front of me. And he said, it was this long. Now, I'm a chef, so a cake should have, eggs, flour, butter, milk, sugar, right? Five things. And he said straight into the trash, because he didn't realize as a chef that when you go to the shop and you buy a cake these days, it's not the cake from days gone by with the 5 ingredients in it. It's got 75 ingredients. We don't know what half of them are. We don't know how they react with our bodies. And I know cake is not the healthiest thing, but if you expand that to all the things, you'll find that even things that should have 1 or 2 ingredients now have 15 ingredients. For example, I love Mexican food. I love making tacos. And I have to search through the tortillas in the supermarket. And I know probably in the UK there's not 75 different tortillas, but in certainly in the USA, if you want tortillas, there's like a whole section of tortillas. I have to search through them all to find the one with the ingredients: corn, lime juice, salt. And it'd be nice to have ones without salt, but you can't because it's a preservative. But sometimes I can look and there's, maltodextrin, guar gum, all these stabilizers. Some of them have color to make them yellow. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And most people are not aware of this insidious thing that's happening throughout the food industry that is causing us to be sick, causing us to be overweight, causing us to have diseases. Even when we think we're just getting a tortilla and it should have corn and salt and lime juice in it, and it doesn't. And that's why people don't know what's going on. That's why people are like, why am I sick when I eat healthy? But do you eat healthy? Because did you read all the labels?
Yeah, I really resonate with that, because I think it's better over here in Europe than it is in the States. But when I have been in the States, like, there's been times when, like, you can even go to a Whole Foods, for instance, and like, you still think you're choosing the healthier options because it's a Whole Foods, and then you can still go in and be like, oh, this has this and this. And it's not that I'm against all those foods, but if you're eating those on an everyday occasion, then it's going to be some kind of like detriment to your health. Like, once in a while maybe, like, but like, if you want a slice of cake, every once in a while, great. But like, if you're doing that every day, or you're eating the tortillas, as you mentioned, every single day, and thinking that's the healthiest way possible, then that's when you see kind of things start to deteriorate, especially health wise.
Yeah. So I've got a whole chapter in my book on how to read nutrition labels, excuse me. And once you learn how to read a nutrition label and you find the product that is the healthiest in the section or in the type of food that you want, you only have to do that once. Because once you've found that brand that works and that you know has got the least ingredients and you know is the healthiest for you, you just keep buying that brand. So, yeah, you might have to do it for your tortillas. You might have to do it for your refried beans. You might have to do it for your salsa. You might have to do it for your hummus and all the things. But you only have to do it once. And then once you've found that brand, you just keep buying that brand. Of course, I'd love to say you can make your own guacamole. You can make your own salsa. Or you can even make your own tortillas. But most people are not going to be stay at home, cook from scratch every single thing on their plate. And there are going to be things that you need to buy from the supermarket pre-made. Like, could I make my own tortillas? Yeah. Do I? No. I'm not doing that. I've got better things to do with my time. I used to make my own plant milk. And the thing about plant milk is that if you make it at home, it's obviously got two ingredients, water and whatever you're using as your substrate, whether that be oats or soy or almonds or whatever. But it goes off very, very quickly. There's no preservatives in it, even if it's in the fridge. If your jar or bottle or whatever is not 100% sterilised, you put your finger on it, before you pour the milk in or whatever, and it got some bacteria in there. Within 3 days, it's separating and you have to throw it out or drink it. Your coffee gets kind of separated and it's not lovely. So you find the healthiest plant milk that you can buy. And in my case, I've managed to find soy milk that has two ingredients, which is soybeans and water, which is fantastic. But sometimes people think, I'm going to go plant-based, or I want to improve my health, or I've got some kind of lactose intolerant, I'm going to stop eating or drinking the dairy. And they just randomly go to the supermarket, see some magic claims on the front, like high in vitamin D or, plant-based or gut healthy or something with probiotics or something. They read the front and they don't look at the back. And then when they buy the product, and then they start having issues with their tummy and, it doesn't feel right. I don't know what's going on. And they turn it around and it's full of these stabilizers, this maltodextrin and these guar gums and these xanthan gums, and they play havoc with the gut intestinal lining. And, people go, well, plant milk sucks. I'm going to go back to dairy milk. It didn't make me feel as bad, right? But it's all about knowing what's in the product.
What was it that kind of led you towards nutrition? Because obviously when you were younger, obviously at 4, you had to go on a diet, but I'm assuming that's not the reason that you dove into nutrition. It wasn't the kind of, it wasn't the thing that led you down this path.
No, well, there's a couple of things. I wanted to do a degree in nutrition straight out of high school, but it didn't really exist. I know it sounds ridiculous. I'm sure there are nutritionists my age, but where I was, it wasn't so clear and straightforward, and you had to go to this kind of alternative nutrition college. It wasn't like a university, and my mum and dad were like not having any of that. As it turned out, I ended up in a completely different career straight out of high school. I got into radio. My parents were very unhappy about that, but it didn't matter. But I was always interested in health and nutrition from a very, very young age. My mum always cooked us very, very healthy foods, and I was very big into sport. And as I mentioned before, I was always trying to manipulate my body to be as healthy as I could be. And life got in the way. And then my dad died of a heart attack very, very suddenly. And it really brought home to me that it's important to be healthy throughout your life. And it took me, I'm going to say decades, to come to the realization of what I needed to do with my life. I didn't actually get my master's till 2018, and by that time my dad had been dead for 25 years, right? So there was this big time in between where it was kind of like, I'll just push it under the rug. And I read science, I love science, and eventually I was just like, you know what? No, I'm going to find out the truth. I'm going to do the degree. I'm going to be able to help other people. And I think I also came to that reconciliation with the death of my dad, because I did blame him for a while. Once I started learning about nutrition, then I was like, well, dude, why didn't you look after yourself? Like, it's your fault that you're dead. And that's a horrible thing to say, right? But in my heart, I was like, it's not fair on me, and it wasn't about him. It was all about me. It's not fair on me. I've had to suffer for all this time without you. And you could have looked after yourself more. And I was a bit angry for a really long. And then, of course, more study. And then I read this article about the history of cardiology, because, yeah, that's interesting, right? Everybody just picks up an article about the history of cardiology. And back when my dad was alive, cardiologists thought that you could either get a heart attack from three ways. It was a natural part of aging, it was genetic, or it was bad luck. And they didn't put lifestyle into the equation. And not only did they not put lifestyle into the equation, they refuted lifestyle. When there was some evidence, they said, no, that's an outlying study. Back in 1990, Dr. Dean Ornish did a study that proved that lifestyle had everything to do with developing heart disease. And the Australian Cardiology Society said, yeah, outlier. It's these three things: getting old, genetics, and bad luck. And luckily for the world, over the last 30 years, there's been more and more studies proving that lifestyle has everything to do with heart disease. Look, I'm sure genetics have something to do with it. Congenital heart disease, congenital heart defects and things like that. That's a different story. That's completely different to getting atherosclerotic heart disease. And for those of you who don't know what that is, that means the hardening of the arteries, the thinning of the arteries caused by fatty deposits in your arteries. And that's what blocks the heart artery and stops blood getting to the heart. And that's what causes a heart attack. And that's what happens to most people who have heart attacks. And so when I learned that it really wasn't his fault, because he wasn't being given the advice from the doctor, so how could he make the changes to his health that were necessary? Then I kind of mellowed off about blaming him. And then I just flipped it and I was like, well, he didn't know and I couldn't save him. Well, I couldn't save him because I was like young and I had no education, right, and nutrition. But now I am educated and now the knowledge is there. You can't unknow this. So now my job is to help other people not die of heart attacks. So it was a long journey, but I feel really happy now that I'm here and that I can help other people. And if my book or this podcast or anything you do or anything other people in the plant-based space does helps one person not die from a heart attack, then it's all worth it. But of course, you and I both know we don't want to help one person not die from a heart attack. We want to help 8 billion people not die from a heart attack.
I really resonate with a lot of what you said, because there was so little information back then that people weren't able to look after themselves in a way, shape or form that benefited them, because it's the same as when people were like, hey, smoking doesn't cause cancer, and doctors were promoting cancer, well, they were, but they were promoting smoking. And it's the same with heart disease. It's the same with many other lifestyle conditions. And as you said, genetics can play a role in it, and it's probably around 10 to 20%. But as your lifestyle is really going to pull those triggers. So pull those triggers to kind of how your life then looks. So if you live a relatively healthy life, you're going to progressively, hopefully over time, have the best health possible. Whereas if you're going to be sitting there, smoking, drinking, eating a ton of junk food, there's a good chance that you're probably going to get that heart disease if you are predispositioned to get it as well. It's just those kind of like little triggers that you get. I think one thing that did it surprise me? I don't think it did surprise me that even when you were in uni, when you were studying was the fact that you started promoting plant-based foods. However, you were told that you had an agenda.
Yeah, I know. What is that? Oh, my goodness. So, again, we're not talking in the 70s or 80s. We're talking 2016, 2017. I graduated in 2018. And I had to do an assignment on a fictional client, elderly lady who was having osteoporosis and needed to up her calcium intake. And of course, I went and got all the latest studies on calcium and non-dairy calcium, and I put them in the paper, and I got a C. And and Callum, I don't know about you, but I'm not a C student, right? And I was devastated. It's like the first C I've ever got. And I was like, oh. And I thought, I'm going to check all my studies again. And I checked all the studies, and, there were studies from respected researchers like Dr. Neil Barnard from the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And they were real studies. The thing about nutrition studies is a lot of times you can't have a randomized controlled blind study. And for those people who don't know what I'm talking about, it's when you take two groups of people, one group of people you give the treatment to, and it's usually in the form of a pill. And then the other group of people you give the treatment, you give them a placebo, which is also in the form of a pill. So neither of the people know, are they taking the treatment or are they taking the placebo? Well, that's impossible to do with nutrition studies, because you're either eating dairy or not eating dairy. You're either eating plant-based products or you're not eating, you know what I mean? So people kind of know. So some scientists think it's not the highest level of evidence, but I disagree, because it's real life evidence. Yes, you can't eliminate all the things that could interfere, because it's a real life situation. People do what they do. Sometimes people lie about what they ate or whatever. In fact, mostly all the time people lie about what they ate. But on the whole, if you give somebody a diet that is plant-based and healthy, and then you give somebody a diet that is not plant-based and, in my mind, considered unhealthy, and then see the differences, I think that's a valid study. So I was using these studies, they're called epidemiological studies. I was using these studies, and so that was sad. But I called a friend who had already graduated, and she is married to a plant-based doctor, and she's been plant-based for years and years. And I had a little bit of a whinge to her, and she said, Terri, don't worry about it. All you care about is getting that piece of paper, that degree. It's a C. Don't freak out, and just do what they want, learn the stuff, get the degree, and then go and teach the people the truth. And so that's what I've done. And it really makes me sad that there are some professionals, and I think probably not so much nutrition professionals, but people like general practitioners who don't want to look into the science, whether they don't want to, or they don't have time to, or they just pay attention to what was told to them in university, and they don't go outside of that to learn more. It makes me a bit sad. But recently I did a podcast with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine Next Generation, which are the students, medical students. And these are medical students that are going through the system, learning how to diagnose disease, learning how to prescribe medications, but on their own bat, they're going outside the system to the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, and they're doing this degree, or it's a diploma outside to be board certified by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, so that when they become general practitioners or cardiologists or obstetricians or whatever they become, they have this extra tool bucket of information where they can say to their patients, hey, let's look at lifestyle before we start putting you on medications, or let's put you on medications to give you a kickstart, and then let's help you using lifestyle. So I think the world is changing, and it's changing from the med students, which is great, and organisations like the American College of Lifestyle Medicine and the one in the UK whose name escapes me. So apologies to the people in the UK. They're actually helping doctors understand that lifestyle plays a really important part. And I think too, doctors want their patients to get better. I mean, there's the Hippocratic Oath, right? Do no harm. So when one becomes a doctor, my greatest regret in life is not becoming a doctor. You want to heal your patients. You want your patients to get better. So don't you want to have all the tools at your disposal to help your patients get better? I hope so.
Yeah. I find it hard when doctors, physicians don't even look at the evidence themselves because, it's confusing out there. And, there's people, if the doctors and the physicians don't understand the new emerging evidence, for instance, how do we expect that to then trickle down to the general public who are still, arguing over whether fats or carbs are, they're good. Because if you don't have that knowledge there, it's hard to then trickle that down to people that actually are struggling. But also at the same time, at some point somebody then profits from that. Although that does sound like a conspiracy to a lot of people. In some countries, it is very much people are profiting from, people not being at the wellest or as well as possible. And that comes from, food industries in general. Because that outdated information could be updated and help prevent disease, but there's just this stubbornness to change.
Yes. So you and I probably pay attention to the guidelines, the food guidelines, which are put out by our countries. America puts them out once every 5 years. I think the same with Australia, Canada. Everybody has these food guidelines, and these guidelines inform health professionals about what the public should be eating to be healthy. But really, when you look at them on a micro level, it's not optimal nutrition that they're looking at. It's absence of disease. And there is a huge big gap between being diseased state and being optimally nourished. And who wants to know how to be absent of disease when you could learn how to be optimally nourished? So sometimes these guidelines are also infiltrated by voices that are not scientific. So, for example, in America at least, the people who write the guidelines, they take into consideration scientific research, they take into consideration public comment, and they also take into consideration industry experts. And some of those industry experts are the egg board, the dairy board, the meat board, and their lobbyists, and they have a whole lot. And they will do anything to keep their products in the guidelines, because not only do they inform health professionals, particularly in this country, they inform what you are allowed to feed children in institutions such as primary schools. They say elementary schools here, but you understand what a primary school is. Primary schools and in any kind of facility for the aged that is government run. And so while the science is saying eat plants, eat plants, eat plants, if you're a primary school, you can't feed your kids plant-based milk because the law says you have to feed them dairy milk. And not only do you have to feed it to them, you have to feed it to them every single day. So there's this kind of space in what the literature says and what is happening in reality. But I think I have hope because there's been some guidelines. Canada, for example, took out dairy out of their guidelines. So, and I know Canada probably runs on a similar system to Australia and the UK because we're all under the beautiful umbrella of the UK. But they don't, make their kids drink dairy anymore, which is awesome. And I know that there's been some guidelines in Germany and I think it was the Danish guidelines as well. They lowered the amount of meat and dairy that you should be eating and promoted more plant-based food. So I think the tides are turning, but just because the dietary guidelines say eat more lentils, if you ask the public about what do the dietary guidelines say, I could probably guarantee you that 99.99% of people would not know what you were talking.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, we are seeing massive shifts as you mentioned, Canada, Germany, the UK, a few others. It had the food pyramids kind of been flipped on its head now, where it's kind of like, eat more plants or make plants, a center of your plate, even if you are going to eat meat, if you are going to have dairy, meat, make plants a big portion of it. And it's wild that something, as basic as just eat plants, a bit move more, stress less, is seen as also radical. It's seen as like this radical movement, especially because I see it changing in multiple other countries. But then we get to like the States, and especially now with the whole Maha movement of Make America Healthy Again, and they're pulling in people that realistically are influencers to control the dietary guidelines. So talking about beef tallow and raw milk and multiple other things, and I feel like it's just going a bit backwards over there at the moment. But hopefully there'll be some progression there as well of maybe add some more plants and not just kind of red meat, raw milk.
Yes. So there's the new guidelines come out, I think, in October or November, and there has been some whispers that there will be an emphasis on plants. So we have our fingers crossed. I wrote a letter to the guidelines stating my case for more plants. I know that the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine actually go to, I think it's Congress, or I don't know what it is. I don't understand the American system. They go in front of people who make decisions and they state their case. And I know a lot of other plant-based doctors do that as well. But, they do so next to the beef industry and next to the carnivore diet people and stuff. And so when you have politicians with no nutrition or dietary qualifications making decisions based on the information that they get from these letters and these public hearings, you get the best that you can get, right? If you had maybe the president of the Cardiology Society sitting there, you might get a better result. But you just fingers crossed, Callum.
It's fingers
you just
crossed.
have to, yeah. And if you are a voice too, look, I'm not American, but I live in America. So again, as I said in the start of this podcast, you have to respect the cultures and the laws of the land that you live in. But didn't stop me writing a letter to the government saying, please get rid of meat, dairy and eggs out of the guidelines. So we'll see.
Fingers crossed. I think if we focus on health, a lot of the time, a lot of us can just say, eat more plants, be more healthy, whatever healthy looks like to them. But then we live in a world where there's, food deserts, there's, obesogenic environments. And I feel like that's very hard for people, because I was watching a video the other day on YouTube, and a guy called Will went to somewhere in the States, I can't remember whereabouts it was, this small town, yet getting a fresh vegetable, getting a piece of fruit was actually really hard to find. Like everywhere was kind of instant noodles, there wasn't any supermarkets, like they may be able to find some like frozen peas, but that's really about it. You couldn't get any fresh vegetables, any fresh produce at all. So I think as much as we can be like, hey, like be healthy, like we can eat healthier, for some places, and I think this is realistically, I think more in the places like the States, this is also in Australia as well, in some of the more rural places, that it's harder to get these things. So for a lot of people, it is hard, especially when they are literally in those food deserts, and then you get the food that is then causing them obesity, causing them illness. And it's just, how do people get around that?
Yes, so those food deserts and food swamps are more prolific in areas of low socioeconomic status and also with minority populations, which is doubly worse. That's good English. So And sometimes these people don't have access to transportation, because if you can't afford to run a car, you can't afford to buy petrol, and you can't afford to drive to the next town, maybe 45 minutes away or whatever, to go to a real supermarket where you can buy some fresh broccoli. And maybe you've got kids or whatever and you're stuck at home, or whatever the situation is, you are bound by your geographic location. And the only thing you can catch a bus to, or you can walk to if you're lucky, probably in America, not walk to, is a dollar store. And the dollar store is just full of garbage. And not only is it full of garbage, it's full of cheap garbage, because maybe you don't have money and you can't afford to buy fresh food. Then you buy whatever is in front of you, and you are stuck in that cycle. So it is very difficult. It's a problem that cannot be solved very, very easily, but it would be awesome if supermarkets would understand the situation where they could open in these areas to give people access to food. But unfortunately, supermarkets, just like any other company, their main priority is not the health of their customer. Their main priority is making a profit. So if there was a supermarket in an area and there wasn't enough population to support it, or these dollar stores came in and took away their customers, they'll close down and they'll go to more affluent neighbourhoods where people will spend the money on the food. But can I just say again, Callum, I do feel for the people in these areas, but if you don't live in one of those areas and you have access to fresh food, but you still buy the garbage because you think it's cheaper, you're misinformed, because some of the cheapest foods on the planet are whole, fresh plant foods. Things, well, not fresh, but dried beans, for example. In the supermarket just down the road from me, I can buy a pound of dried beans, which when cooked turns into 4 pounds of beans, or 3 pounds of beans, for $1. If I buy a can of beans, which is like 400 grams, so that's a pound of beans, I guess, it's going to be $2. So it's like 8 times more expensive to buy the beans pre-cooked in the can than it is to buy the raw beans. And the only knowledge and skill that you need to make those beans turn into cooked beans is how to boil water and put the beans in the boiling water, and maybe you soak them or whatever. But it's not a lot of knowledge. And most people have a phone, and most people can ask somebody and you can learn how to cook a bean. But that's so cheap, and those beans are so nutritious. They're full of fibre, they're full of protein, they're full of complex carbohydrates, they're full of iron or whatever, all the good things, right? You can eat those beans. And even if you only have one vegetable, even if you can only afford to buy carrots that week, beans and carrots is better than a cheeseburger. So it might not be interesting food. It might not be the most tasty thing you've ever had in your life, but if money is a problem, things like beans, potatoes, carrot, broccoli, I don't know about England, but broccoli is one of the cheapest vegetables to buy. You can eat all of it. You can eat the stalk, you can eat the flowers, you can eat the leaves, and it's very nutritious. It's high in protein. It's high in all the B vitamins. I mean, it's just such gorgeous stuff. It's really tasty. And I think it was Dr. Esselstyn that said, if you put sauce on anything, it's going to make it taste delicious. So all you need to do is find, whether that be salsa or some kind of sauce that you make yourself out of vegetables or nuts or whatever that's tasty for you. Get a recipe off the internet. Even if you don't like broccoli, you can smother it in, some kind of veggie sauce. I make it in my book. I have a fake cheese sauce made out of carrots, potatoes, and onions, and it's delicious. Again, carrots, potatoes, and onions, 3 of the cheapest foods you can buy. Make the sauce.
I think that's the thing is, like, we look at things like, you look at beans, you look at lentils, you look at, chickpeas, you look at all the vegetables. They are normally some of the cheapest. Yes, there's a few that, are a bit more expensive because they're considered exotic. But, the basic staples are quite cheap. However, as you said, those things are, sometimes a bit boring for some people. Sometimes it is a bit bland for some people because they don't know how to cook them. And at the same time, it's not a sexy sell in comparison to picking up a bunch of crisps or, potato chips in the US, which then causes an addiction because you're going to go back and get more because you're like, oh, this is nice because, I've hit that kind of bliss point that you're kind of like, yeah, I really like, for instance, like Cheetos or what's it, so whatever. Like, you're not just going and having a few of those. Like, you're eating the whole entire tub, and then you will go back for more. Lentils, they aren't the sexy sell in comparison. But I think when we go towards your book, you're looking at more the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine, aren't we? What are those 6 pillars for people to kind of like dive deep into?
So the number one for me anyway is nutrition, plant-based nutrition, exercise, restorative sleep, getting enough sleep and getting good sleep, connection to others, the absence of risky substances such as using alcohol and smoking and drugs. And I have forgot, and stress reduction. And I mentioned a study back in 1990 with Dr. Dean Ornish, who proved that you could change the trajectory of heart disease using lifestyle. And he uses all those pillars in his studies. Whenever he does a study, some kind of disease-based study, he doesn't say, okay, you people, you're going to eat plants, and you people, you're not going to eat plants, and let's see what happens. He says, okay, you people, you're going to, do stress reduction techniques. You're going to stop smoking. You're going to get some sleep. You're going to do some exercise. And obviously he has coaching and training. He just doesn't tell people to do the stuff because that's obviously hard. But he gets people to do the whole thing, go all in. Think about all the pillars of lifestyle that will make you a healthy person. Because yes, eating plants is awesome for your body and it's a great kickstart. But if you are stressing because of work or family and you are still smoking and drinking and taking drugs, you're not going to get the results that you deserve, and you're not going to see that lasting health, because the human body is not just a stomach. It has other parts to it, your mind, your heart, your lungs, all the bits, your soul. You want to be a whole person, and you want to do everything that you can to be as healthy as you can. And I don't mean like ticking a box every day. Oh, did I get enough exercise? Did I get enough sleep? Did I stop smoking? Blah, blah, blah. It's about going about your life in the healthiest way and not stressing on it. Because if you start from a place of ill health and then you go, okay, I need to do these 6 things every single day, what are you doing? You're increasing stress. Which is counterproductive to what you're trying to do. Being kind to yourself and going at your own pace and saying, okay, yesterday I had 5 cigarettes. Maybe today I can only have 2, and I know that I'm not a stopping smoking expert, and probably abstinence is the way to go or whatever. But maybe we'll talk about donuts instead, because that's probably where I used to eat a donut every day with coffee. Maybe, today I'm going to cut that donut in half and throw the other donut in the fridge and have it later. And then tomorrow you have the other half of the donut, but then you realize the donuts only have a lifespan of about 4 hours, right? So yesterday's donut is nowhere near as nice as, today when it's a day old. So then you're like, well, that was yuck. So maybe instead of having a donut with my coffee, maybe I'll have a banana. And then you're still having something with your coffee. You've just swapped it for something else. Or maybe if you're feeling really frisky, I'll look at Terri's book and I'll make her awesome natural oatmeal cookies, and then it makes 36 of them, and I'll shove them in the freezer. And at 11 o'clock every morning when I have my coffee, I'll pull out one of those cookies and I'll have one of those cookies. And then it's a no-brainer, because you don't even have to think about it. You want something with your coffee. You've already pre-made something really healthy, and you don't have to feel like you're bargaining with yourself, oh, should I have it? Should I not have it? Just have it, right? Who cares? Just have it. It's healthy. Eat it. Move on with your life. It's the bargaining in your brain that causes people to waver. So if you set up systems, okay, I'm going to have healthy cookies instead of donuts, right? When I wake up in the morning, I'm going to take my dog for a walk, because guess what? My dog wants a walk. She doesn't want to do her wee-wees in the tiny little yard I've got, because after a while it just smells like dog wee. She wants to go and smell the flowers down at the park. Well, that's a win-win for you and your dog. Like, your dog's having a great time. It's making your dog healthier, and you're getting healthier because you're going for a walk. Now you don't have to stress about the exercise that you didn't do, because you're doing it as part of your life already. And the whole plan is to get eventually all these 6 pillars into your life so that you're not having to tick them off. You're not having to think about them. It's just the way you are. And then once you achieve that, then, you're golden.
That is the thing. It is very much trying to put all 6 into your lifestyle, and it's not going to happen on day one. It's never going to happen on day one. It's just that compounding evidence over time that you can do it. So, set a bedtime if you need to, restorative sleep, go to bed, don't sit scrolling through TikTok for the next 2 hours, because although you're in bed, you're not asleep. And the same with risky substances. Yeah, addictions are there, and you can wean yourself off them after a while, but it takes that discipline. And the physical activity and these things, everything compounds over time and will get better for you. It's just making that change, making that swap to make those things, align with how you want to feel. Because a lot of people don't know how they want to feel, because that baseline just feels so normal. It feels so natural that they don't realize that they can feel any other way. So, someone sitting on the sofa feeling a bit what I would say would probably be grouchy and, a bit huddled over, and, isn't probably the best they can feel if they were to put all these 6 different lifestyle pillars in. They could feel so much better. But when it comes to diet, because obviously we know what physical activity can be, we can know what stress reduction can be, and avoiding risky substances, restorative sleep, social connection, we know all of those things. But when it comes to diet, people are confused. So
Yeah, why is that?
however, your book does break down a protocol for people to at least try to stick to.
Yes, I'm really happy that this kind of came to me. It's 3 things. So it's really simple to do. Number 1, you have to believe that you can change. That's the start. Oh, this is not one of the 3 things, but you have to believe that you can change. You have to believe that what is possible for you is ultimate health at the end of the road. If you don't believe that, then I think maybe you need to work with people who are more understanding of, people's needs than I am, as far as from a psychological perspective. I'm not a psychologist, but once you believe that you can reach the other side, maybe you don't need to believe it. Maybe you just need to start, right? And then the belief will come later. So what you need to do is, if you believe that plant-based foods are going to help you, which you should, because there's an unbelievable mountain of evidence, then you just start with what you already know. So, Callum, if you only like carrots and potatoes and you never want to see a piece of broccoli ever, and that's all you want to eat, then you just start with carrots and potatoes. And maybe you like bananas. Okay, start with carrots and potatoes and bananas. I'm not saying that's all you're going to eat. But in the book, I have a table of, I think, 200 foods from all the 5 plant-based food groups. So there's the grains, the beans and legumes, the fruit, the vegetables, and the herbs and spices, and nuts and seeds too. They're in there as well. So I guess that's 6. So you just highlight in the book the things that you already like. And you may say to me, I don't like anything plant-based. Well, I'll give you a highlighter and you'll highlight all the things that you like. And I guarantee you're going to come up with 20 or 30 things, right? It's just, there's going to be 20 or 30 things that you like in there. So just start eating those things, start eating more of those things, and crowding out the things that you know are unhealthy for you. So if you only like kidney beans, but you don't like pinto beans, then just start eating more kidney beans. Just add them onto everything. Just add them onto your salads, add them into your stews, add them into your soups, stick some on top of your baked potato, whatever it is, just keep adding them in. And then once you've got that, then start looking at the recipes that you already make and start swapping out the unhealthy animal products for more healthy plant-based products. And look, the book explains how to do that. So, for example, one of my favorite things is spaghetti bolognese. And spaghetti bolognese traditionally has meat-based sauce with tomatoes and herbs and spices. And so a real easy swap for that would be to swap out the meat for your lentils. And if that's too freaky for you, you can buy the plant-based meaty crumbles made out of textured soy protein, and then you can use those and see what you think. And the same with the spaghetti. If you're used to using white spaghetti, you can change that for whole wheat spaghetti or lentil or chickpea pasta or brown rice pasta or something like that. And already you've taken something that is normally quite fatty, quite full of animal products, hormones and medications and all the nasty things, saturated fat. And then you've decreased the amount of all those bad things, and you've increased the fiber and you've increased the vitamins and minerals and all that. So you just start swapping out the recipes that you already like. So we've started with the things we like, we've swapped some things, and then very, very lastly, go back to the list and look at something that you've not tried before and try a new thing. But don't go to the Asian supermarket and buy 75 different weird green vegetables and let them go sliming in your fridge. Just try one thing. So like for me, it would be like an artichoke. Like I'm not big on artichokes. I know they're seasonal. They're in season now here in the States. You have to do a lot of stuff to them, pick off all the spiky bits or whatever, and then you have to do something to cook them. That's too much effort for me. I might do that once a year and go, yeah, I had an artichoke. But it doesn't matter, because even though I'm not eating artichokes 24/7, I'm eating 75 different vegetables that have similar nutrition profiles. So I'm not missing out on anything. So those are my three things. Start with what you already like, swap out the stuff, and then lastly, try new things. And don't think about taking things away. Think about adding things. And once you start adding things, you actually naturally crowd out the stuff that's not helping you.
I feel exactly how I explain it to people is like, you like a chili. Everything in chili is plant-based, apart from the mince. Swap it with lentils. Swap it with a crumbled tempeh if you need to. Anything.
Oh, yummy.
The rest of it is completely plant-based, and I think it sounds scary eating more plant-based meals, but when you realize that the majority of what you're eating is already plants, and you just need to swap one ingredient, it's actually not that scary. Like as you said,
it's not.
Or a chili or whatever else. Like a lot of these things, the rest of the ingredients surrounding them are completely plant-based, and it's just that tiny little swap. And if you need something, whether that be a meat alternative to just have that transitional period, great. Like that's going to help you a long way. And maybe one day, try lentils or do a mixture of lentils and the meat, just so you have various different concoctions to kind of wean yourself away.
Yeah, see, it's a good thing that you said that too, Callum, because I said swap it out, but maybe you're not at that point yet. Yeah, so maybe you have to go, okay, I'm going to put half beef and half lentils and see how that goes. And then, wean yourself off it like that. Like my husband loves eating the Beyond Meat burgers. Yeah. Loves them, right? I wouldn't touch them with a barge pole. They're very high in fat. They got a little bit less saturated fat now. But the whole point behind these burgers is that they look and taste and feel and smell like meat. Now, I haven't eaten any meat for 40 years, so I don't want that. I don't want that look and feel and taste of meat, right? So it's not on my wheelhouse. But for him, he's like, I do want that look and taste and feel of meat, but I don't want to kill the cows, and I don't want the saturated fat, and I don't want the heart disease, and I want to make my wife happy. All that.
That last one's the main one.
So all those factors go into him, but into him choosing that plant-based meat substitute. But if I make a chili, I'm making it without that plant-based meat substitute, and he's eaten it and he thinks it's awesome. So we all on our little journey, and I think some nutritionists and whole food plant-based people poo-hoo these meat substitutes. And I understand why they do, because a lot of them are highly processed and they've got lots of ingredients that you don't need, and they're really not that much healthier, but they are healthier. They're better than the alternative, which is the medications, the hormones, the saturated fat, the cancer-causing properties of the meat. They're much better than that. And then it's a stepping stone. You know, maybe next time it'll be half lentils, half plant-based meat. You know what I mean? So eventually I'd love everybody to go to whole foods, but you do what you can do and then you see what the results are. If you find that you've moved from a meat-based diet to a plant-based diet, but you are substituting your meat products and dairy products with plant-based processed foods, and you find that you're not getting as healthy as you wanted to, then you need to start looking at those plant-based processed foods and working out how to use less processed foods and more whole foods. And I think people will find that they do get the health benefits that they're after by swapping them out. And unfortunately, what happens is people don't have the knowledge. So they go from the meat-based diet to the processed vegan diet and they see no results. And they go, well, it doesn't work, so I'm going back. You know, so it's a process for some people and it can take time. But when you get to the other side, the benefits are phenomenal.
It's very much, progress over perfection. Like, you just need to progress at your own time. Like, we're not aiming for perfection. We're aiming for you to feel healthy within yourself. You're aiming to become the best version of yourself. And that may take 4 years. It may take 4 months. It may take 4 weeks. It may take 4 days. But everyone's, as we said earlier at the beginning, everybody's so bio-individual. So go with your journey. What you're doing at the moment is better than not doing it at all.
Yeah. And I'd like to encourage people watching this podcast or listening, if you're thinking about making a change, go to your general practitioner and get a full blood panel. Get your cholesterol taken, get your HbA1c taken, which is a measure of your glucose over the last 3 months. Get a fasting glucose taken, do a poo in a box or whatever, look at what's going on in your colon. Whatever it is that you can do as a well person, get the bloods done. And then after you've been on a plant-based diet or you're living the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine for 6 months or something, and I'd say the earliest 3 months, then go and get it done again. Because maybe your main impetus was, I want to lose 20 pounds, right? And you've been doing it for 5 months and you've only lost 2 pounds and you think it's not working. Well, you go back to your doctor and you take the blood tests and all of a sudden you notice, well, your cholesterol's dropped 50 points. Or I know you don't use that that scale in the UK. Your cholesterol's dropped 30%, say. Yeah. And your HbA1c is dropped and your fasting glucose is lower and your blood pressure is lower. Who cares that you only lost 2 pounds? You are a measurably healthier person because your blood indicators, your biometric markers are indicators of your health. And if they are going in the right direction, then whatever you're doing is going in the right direction. And weight loss is just a symptom or an indicator of your health. Your body will lose weight, but maybe not as much as you want, right? So you might want to lose 20 pounds, you only lose 5. But as long as your biometric markers are in line and you're getting healthier, it's all good.
There's always, when it comes to people looking towards a plant-based diet, there's always a slight concern about, slight nutrients. Is there any nutrients of concern for the people?
Well, if you eat a completely whole food plant-based diet, you will need to supplement with vitamin B12. And I also recommend women over 50 getting a DEXA scan to find out what their bone density is, and you may need to supplement with calcium. There was a little bit of argy-bargy around supplementation of calcium and the increased risk of heart disease, but that has been, shall I say, not squashed, but I think it's an individual person-by-person basis. I supplement with calcium and I have genetic heart disease. So you would think those two things would be contraindicated, but I have faith that I'm doing the right thing for my body. Vitamin B12, vitamin D, maybe calcium, maybe omega-3, but you should be able to get your omega-3s through whole foods such as walnuts, chia seeds, and flax seeds. But a lot of people don't go out into the sun, and the vitamin D is really important for heart health and bone health.
I mean, I live in the UK, so vitamin D.
Yeah, exactly right. So the way we facilitate our vitamin D is that the UV rays hit our skin, and then the body makes it in the skin. And if you're not going in the sun, or you are really dark skinned, it's difficult for that vitamin D to make itself. So supplementing with vitamin D, but I don't recommend that people just randomly go out and buy all these supplements, right? Because over supplementation, it could be as dangerous as under supplementation. So, for example, I would always, when I go for my well person test, check once a year, I always get my vitamin B12 and my vitamin D checked. And because of my heart condition, I have a calcium score as well. So you get it checked, you find out, are you doing well or are you not doing well? And then you start supplementing. But regardless, even if you don't have a blood test, vitamin B12 is a non-negotiable, because I've heard you talk about B12 before, Callum. The B12, it used to be in the it's a bacteria, it used to be in the soil. You know, we're washing our veggies, they're all sprayed with bleach or whatever. So there's not going to be any B12 on the veggies anymore. If you eat animal products, those animals are not getting the vitamin B12 anymore because it's not in the soil. So they're being injected or fed vitamin B12 in their feed. And so you buy the milk or whatever, it's got the vitamin B12 in it, or you buy the fortified nutritional yeast or whatever it is. It's not measurable. You don't know how much you're getting. You don't know how you're metabolizing that. So definitely I recommend vitamin B12 supplementation. I prefer personally methylcobalamin, but the general consensus is it doesn't really matter if it's cyanocobalamin or methylcobalamin. And if I'm confusing people, you just buy the vitamin B12, right?
Yeah,
just buy the stuff. And just remember to take it. And that's the important thing. And even though if you look it up, the recommended daily allowance is 2.4 micrograms. And then you look on the bottle, it's like 1,000 milligrams. That's like, 200,000 times or 500,000 times more than I need. Don't stress. You're not going to overdose with the B12. You don't actually assimilate as much B12. It's like 1% or something, or 0.5%. So either I take 100 milligrams every day, micrograms every day, which is like 50 times more than I need to, but it's only 2% bioavailable. Or you can take like 1,000 or 2,000 micrograms like twice a week or something like that. But the thing about taking things twice a week is you will forget. Oh, did I take it on Thursday or did I not take? I don't remember. So I like to have the vitamins in the morning with my coffee done. And probably taking coffee and vitamins at the same time is not ideal, but at least I'm taking them, right? Whereas if I don't remember that, it's not ever going to happen. And then I'm like, oh, when did I last take my vitamin B12? And though for people who wonder why we need the vitamin B12, it's because it is important for your nervous system. And that if you become deficient in vitamin B12, it can have irreversible neurological damage to your body. So absolutely, we need to take it.
I agree. Yeah, we are not cavemen anymore. We are not getting it from the soil or the streams. Unfortunately, we live in a civilized world.
Callum.
Well, Terri, it's been a pleasure to have you here. For the people that want to find out more about you, want to pick up your book, want to find you wherever you are, where can people find you?
Well, here's the book in case you want to see what it looks like.
Fabulous Health.
There it is. You can get it on Amazon. You can also order it through any bookstore, but then it'll take a couple of weeks because it's a print on demand. So you would have to go to the bookstore and say, can I order this book? And then they'd have to look it up on the computer and find it, blah, blah, blah. So you can get it. It's not a problem, but it just takes a little bit more effort if you want to buy it in a bookstore. You can, if you live in America, I'm sorry for all the UK people, but I will sign one and send it to you if you live in the States. All you have to do is go to fabuloushealthbook.net and I will do that for you. And apologies for the people in the UK, but the postage on it would be like $40. And then nobody'd be making any money. It'd be like I'd be giving you a present. So that's where you can find out my Instagram. I'll put in your show notes. It's Fabulous Health TLC. TLC are my initials. And of course, I have the same YouTube as well. So that's where you can find me. And I also have a website, fabuloushealth.net, which I am upgrading at the moment. So that's got lots of nice things in it, like freebies, some recipe books and blogs and free things on there if people want to start from, getting some free stuff from me. I'm happy to send you out some stuff as well.
Just not a free book.
just not this for free. Sorry. This is three years of my life, right? So I need to make the $10 on it, right?
Yeah, and you've done a fantastic job. I have read it and I think it's fantastic. And I feel like for anybody starting off, it's going to be a game changer.
Yeah, I really wanted it to be for people who were confused and overwhelmed and didn't know where to go. And I wanted it to be a step-by-step process that if they just followed the process, everything would be okay and that they would not be confused and overwhelmed anymore and they'd feel a lot more confident in their ability to make healthy choices.
Perfect. It sounds and it is amazing. And I think those people will have the power after reading it, the power to make those changes.
Yeah.
Terri, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. I'm grateful for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Callum. I really, really appreciate you having me on today.